Have you ever caught someone trying to spy on you? I found out because my Uber driver was my coworker. Dylan from accounting had been giving me weird compliments lately that made no sense. Love that green dress you wore yesterday, he'd say on Monday morning, but I'd worn it Sunday night at home while working on personal projects. Your coffee order is so unique, but I'd never gotten coffee with him, ever. Hope your headache's better. After I'd spent Saturday nursing a migraine alone in my apartment. At first I thought he was just being friendly, maybe even flirting, but the specificity was unsettling. How could he know these random details about my private life? Then last Friday, everything clicked into place. I'd booked an Uber to a therapy appointment I'd kept completely private. Not even my best friend knew. The driver pulls up and it's Dylan, grinning behind the wheel. Ashley, what are the odds? He laughs, but something in his eyes felt calculated, not surprised. I played it cool, made small talk during the ride, but my stomach was churning. This couldn't be a coincidence. That weekend, I went through my entire Uber history with a magnifying glass. Dylan had been my driver 17 times in 2 months, always to deeply personal places. My therapist, awkward Tinder dates, my mom's house when she was going through chemo, even late-night pharmacy runs when I was sick. The app showed different driver names each time. Mike Chen, David Rodriguez, Chris Thompson, but when I looked closely at the tiny profile photos, they were all Dylan wearing different hats, fake glasses, even a fake mustache once. He'd been creating multiple fake driver accounts to systematically track my movements around the city. I started connecting the dots and felt physically ill. He knew about my therapy because he'd driven me there 6 times. He knew about my weekend outfits because he'd pick me up from dates and see what I was wearing. He knew when I was sick because he'd driven me to urgent care at midnight. The most disturbing part was how he'd been using this information at work. He'd time his bathroom breaks perfectly to randomly bump into me in the hallway right before I left for appointments. Heading out early today? He'd ask with fake casualness, already knowing exactly where I was going and when. When I had food poisoning and called out sick, he texted me that evening. Saw some great soup recipes on Instagram. Want me to forward them? I'd thought he was being thoughtful. Now I realized he knew I was sick because he'd driven me to the pharmacy at 2 a.m. to buy Pepto-Bismol. He'd been weaponizing my own transportation against me, turning every Uber ride into surveillance. I screenshotted everything. The ride history, the fake profiles, timestamps that proved he was tracking my schedule. My hands were shaking as I realized the scope of his obsession. Monday morning, I marched straight to HR with a folder full of evidence. Turns out I wasn't his only victim. Dylan had been doing this to 3 other female coworkers, all young women who worked remote part-time. He'd specifically target us because we used ride shares more frequently than people who drove to the office daily. Sarah from marketing had noticed the same pattern, but thought she was going crazy. He always knew when I was having a rough day, she told HR, because he'd literally driven her to her divorce lawyer's office and watched her cry in his back seat. The HR director's face went white as we laid out the evidence. Dylan had been running an elaborate stalking operation using ride-sharing apps as his surveillance network. He was obsessed with each and every single one of us, and who knows who he was planning to do to us. Within hours, Dylan was fired and permanently banned from Uber, Lyft, and every other rideshare platform. But the damage was done. He knew intimate details about our lives, our routines, our vulnerable moments. The police said it was one of the most sophisticated stalking cases they'd seen. He'd exploited the trust we place in rideshare drivers and the app's verification systems. Now I'm paranoid about every driver. I screenshot their photo, verify their license plate, and never use my real name. What should have been convenient transportation became a weapon someone used against me. The scariest part? If I hadn't randomly gotten him as a driver that one time, I might never have figured it out. He could have been watching me indefinitely.